Good morning, everyone. It is still morning. It's 11 here in California. We are in Lake County, more specifically Clear Lake Oaks. We're on the east side of Lake County. And I mention that today in particular because we're going to be talking about the empowerment of young women, which is part of the focus of our foundation. Anyway, this is Heidi from the What Can I Do podcast. And this is our book club. We are reading a series of essays and books and looking at philosophers regarding rights and freedoms and equality. Today, we are going to be discussing the ideas of Amartya Kumar Sen, who wrote about development as a freedom. So we're going to see if we can understand. I read some of his book. It's not something to read because reading it out loud is not okay. I recommend you find it online for free and browse. For me, that's the way to introduce myself to this kind of book. I like to read the beginning, see what they're thinking. I'll read maybe the preface or what someone else has said, try to get my mind prepared for some of the ideas. And usually the introductions, well, not the author's introduction, but other people's introductions and critiques and analyses are written at a lower reading level than the author themselves, if we're talking especially older philosophy and stuff like that. So I'll read that. I look at the chapter titles, maybe pick and choose which chapters to kind of peek at if they're interesting. And I like to read their conclusions. Now, sometimes that's plenty. Sometimes that's more than plenty. Sometimes I don't make it that far. That's okay. There's gazillions of books to read. And millions of different philosophers. So if you don't like one, don't. Like Hegel was hard for me. It took me many, many years to even understand people talking about Hegel. Don't ask me. In any case, conclusions are interesting. And if a conclusion makes you go, huh, or a conclusion makes you disagree, that's what makes it worth going back and reading how they tried to prove that.
Right.
So, what we're going to do is we're going to start with Wikipedia to just learn about this person, Mr. Sen, or is it, I think it's Mr. Sen because it could have been Mr. Amartya, but I don't, I think though the way they did this here was in the Western order.
I think so.
Okay, so anyways, we're going to read about him and his ideas, and then we're going to come back and try to apply that thinking, and of course our own, to the empowerment of young women as he wrote it in his words. I'm trying different approaches, by the way, because I'm trying out different teaching methods to settle on what I think works best for this kind of material, because it's, like I said, it's dense. It's dense, but we don't have to be. Okay, so Mr. Sen was born in 1933, which, as I was telling Rhonda, is the same year that my dad was born. My dad passed away quite a while ago now, but the idea that he would be, what was it, 93 years old or something? 92 years old? Wow. Just wow. Oh, yeah? What's going on? 33. This is now 26. That needs to be updated. That's all. I was right. It was my unconscious math that was correct.
That's right.
Wikipedia threw me off. Never believe what you see online without some kind of critical thought. Ever. Especially something that could be changed by any Yahoo that wants to come in and change it. They just mostly don't bother, because who would bother to think about this dude? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is the intersection of the people who would go in here and maliciously change things and this guy are probably not. Anyway, he had a Nobel Prize in economic sciences. So he was an economist and an author, for sure. Interestingly, he was married 3 times, and the last person he married was a Rothschild.
Wow.
In 1991. Anyway, he was born in a Bengali family in Bengal, which was part of British India at that point. And that's very interesting. He was the first Asian to win a Nobel Prize.
Wow.
Well, let's see. Have you ever heard of Tagore? He was a polymath and writer. I don't. Yeah.
I've heard of him, but I don't really know much about him.
Say it again.
Oh, I said it even wrong.
Rabindranath Thakur. And he had a pseudonym, Bhanusimha. He was a polymath. He was the first Asian to win a Nobel Prize in any category, and the first lyricist in non-European. Well, so interesting. But he gave Amartya Sen his name, ʻɔmortːo, which means immortal or heavenly. Okay, it's just interesting and different, and it shows some Sanskrit. Okay, so he went to school in Dhaka. Isn't that interesting? It's fun to hear, not fun, interesting, whatever, provocative, to hear words that have been made famous by wars or scandals or different kinds of things, and then, oh, it's just a regular place with regular people, and then what were we doing?
Right.
What were we doing? Look up Dhaka. So then he went to a different school, Apatha Bhavana. I don't know how impressed. I mean, I don't know how impressive it is because I've not heard of it. But the school had progressive features, didn't like a lot of exams or competitive testing, stressed cultural diversity, and embraced cultural influences from the rest of the world. Well, that sounds a lot like some of the values that we're putting into our school system.
Right.
Cool. He went to college in Calcutta and got a BA in economics with a minor in math. And then he got oral cancer and they thought he was going to die.
Whoa.
But instead, he got radiation treatment. He survived. And that was back in the early 50s. So, I bet the odds of surviving weren't as great.
Yeah, no.
He got a PhD at Cambridge. And then he became the first professor and first head of the economics department at the newly created Jadavpur University in Calcutta at 22.
Wow.
Okay. All that's very interesting. Oh, I see. He of course went on to do other things, but his academic career and teaching isn't quite it. So in 1970, he published a paper called The Impossibility of a Paretian Liberal, which introduced, this is why I'm reading this part, it introduced the liberal paradox, or Sen's paradox, a logical paradox proposed by Amartya Sen, which showed that no means of aggregating individual preferences into a single social choice can simultaneously fulfill the following seemingly mild conditions. The unrestricted condition, the Pareto condition, and liberalism. So it's UPL. The U is this: every possible ranking of each individual's preferences and all outcomes of every possible voting rule will be considered equally. That's one variable. The next one is the Pareto condition. If everybody individually likes some choice better at the same time, the society and its voting rule as a whole likes it better as well. And 3, this may be slightly over my head in terms of holding it all together and making any kind of inference from it. Liberalism, or L, which is the third axis, the third set of variables, I'm not quite sure, from which the theorem derives its gist. From which this is a mathematician, and he's obviously figured something out that's very math. We'll see if we can get it in theory, because for me at least, my math theory is well past my ability to problem solve or comprehend or calculate. But I can theorize with the best of them. Maybe not the best, because I couldn't have made this up, but you know what I mean. Liberalism. All individuals in society must have at least one possibility of choosing differently, so the social choice under a given voting rule changes as well. What? That is, as an individual liberal, anyone can exert their freedom of choice, at least in some decision with tangible results. Okay. I need for myself to really simplify those three things to hold them all together to understand, right? Because he's asking us to do just that, to hold them all together and see where they intersect, right? And he's saying there's no intersection. So let's see what these are again. Unrestricted. Okay. The concept that everybody and everything we think all matters equally. I get that one. That's easy.
Mm-hmm.
The concept that if we all agree that that influences the voting toward that choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, I guess if everybody agreed that they personally would prefer not to be in pain, somehow or another, then the society moves toward avoiding pain as a choice preference that maybe would weigh those choices over others.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that?
I think so.
Okay, so now I've got two stuck together that I understand.
Mm-hmm.
This is called modeling learning when it's at your level. Teachers, pay attention, because if you never do this in front of your students, they don't know how to do it either. And it's not easy. Okay, and it's humbling. Liberalism, then. You have to be able to choose differently. Oh. Okay. If everything's equal and the group preference sways things, then there's no room for choice.
Right.
If everything is equal and there's room for choice, you can't make everybody kind of stick to a certain preference. That's that connection. If people have choices and the group sways us towards certain things, but not everything is able to be equal, because I already proved why that can't happen. That wasn't done super elegantly, and if I was really going to do that, I'd write it out more in a paper and make my claims, but I think that's the beginning of my philosophical analysis and understanding of Amartya Sen, the liberal paragraph. No, many paragraphs, the liberal paradox. Okay, now, let's see if that helps us at all understand this guy's stuff, because that was the point of analyzing that, other than just brain play, which is fun, but that's different. So he illustrated the results by using a hypothetical example involving two individuals, lewd and prude. I like this guy. And three social states. One person reading a particular book, the other reading or neither reading. One's reading, the other's reading, or neither of them are reading. Okay. Prude thinks the book is indecent and that it should be disposed of unread. However, if someone must read it, Prude would prefer to read it than lewd, since Prude thinks that it would be even worse for someone to read and enjoy the book rather than to read it in disgust. Those are all those the book banners.
Yeah, right.
I read the disgusting things so that you may not.
Right. Right.
Okay, that's pretty funny. Given these preferences, the two individuals in the society, given the preferences of the two individuals in the society, a social planner must decide what to do. Should the planner force lewd to read the book, because they could both be reading it, force prude to read the book, or let it go unread? I think that's absolutely rude that lewd can't just read the book and prude can't mind his own business. I have no idea why this thing is... Okay. Under this decisiveness assignment, society would generate cyclic collective preferences, violating acyclicity. Wow. I can see what the word means. A meaning not, cyclicity meaning not cyclic.
Right.
But dang. Or transitivity of social ordering. Transitivity. You can't read it, I will. The switching or switching rules. I'm not entirely sure quite where they mean that.
Right.
Well, I know transitivity would have to do with switching from one to the other, but I'm not quite sure
Right.
how that was meant. I don't understand how that example actually helped, but I do think with Prude and Lude in the book, if I didn't have all that complicated language to wade through in the process, I probably could say it in my own words in a way that made sense of that. Like our choices are Prude gets to read the book, but Lude is left out. They both get to read the book, or nobody reads the book. I just don't get, without further thought, why Lude doesn't get to just read the book and Prude minds his own business, like I said. I hate to repeat that, but I'm
Why isn't that
stuck there. I don't know. Maybe because the way society doesn't approve of the book by a group?
Oh, maybe.
Because we didn't, well, it does say up here if they prefer A to B, something like that. So maybe that's where the part that we were missing. If society's preference is toward Prude, that people shouldn't read the book, then there's no or that people shouldn't read that sort of thing for enjoyment, then Lude does not get the opportunity to just simply choose to read that. And because if they do, that, you know what I mean? That might be the third part of that triangle.
Right.
Okay, that's sort of weird and interesting and probably worth playing with, but I want a visual.
There goes your liberty and freedom.
Well, what liberty and freedom do? I swear if you take any position to its end, somebody does not have liberty and freedom.
Right?
Well, no, because if I don't have the freedom to do anything that I might happen to want to do because of your property rights or your body rights or whatever it is, then there's limits. So nobody has that pure freedom.
Exactly.
And liberty means that if we're talking about liberty as meaning the freedom from oppression from the government or freedom from control from the government, nobody has that either. Not the way that we've been taught we have it.
Yeah, no.
Plus, the way we're taught, they're conflated. And then we're told we have both, and we don't really have either one.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. So he said no famine has ever taken place in a functioning democracy. So he's using math and statistics and economics to make social claims. He talks about the concept of capability, which is an approach to human welfare that concentrates on the actual capability of persons to achieve lives they value rather than solely having a right to freedom to do so. So I think that this is part of the axis of the praxis triangle, and talking about how people aren't free just because you say they're free.
Right.
People aren't free because you pick them up out of slavery or poverty or whatever circumstances and plunk them down into a functioning place where everybody else has been succeeding for a long time and say you're free now. That's not a satisfying definition of freedom.
Right, right.
So like, for example, it's not enough to give people the right to vote. You have to help them register and get them to the polls or get the ballots to them, which, by the way, does not mean fraud. Okay. Then he also looks specifically not just at poor people, but at women and how they've been prevented from developing, and therefore the concept of development is freedom. And I think that's
right.
I think that by coming at it this way and seeing where he developed, I think that now I understand development is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't before. And when I was reading his words, I found it to be a bit dense. So that's why I came to Wikipedia, and now I feel much more comfortable reading his words.
Right, right.
So meantime, let's analyze this just a touch before we go back to his work on young women. In Development is Freedom, Sen outlined 5 specific types of freedom: political freedoms, economic facilities, social opportunities, transparency guarantees, and protective security. Political freedoms refer to the ability of the people to have a voice in government, to be able to scrutinize the authorities. As we do this, I'd like to kind of ponder, do we have this in our school plans? And indeed we do. We have the political freedoms because they're becoming educated in how to have a voice in their government and scrutinize the authorities. That's one of our main strands. Economic facilities concern both the resources within the market and the market mechanism itself. Any focus on income and wealth in the country would serve to increase the economic facilities for the people. We're giving deliberate financial training. Taxes, checkbooks, accounts, stocks, all of it. So, okay. Social opportunities deal with the establishments that provide benefits like healthcare, education for the populace, allowing individuals to live better lives. Well, that's why we want to have a pantry and teach the kids entrepreneurial skills and that sort of thing. We want to bring programs and sponsor programs through our grants, which we don't have yet. And if you see this and you have ideas, please hook us up. Social, populist, transparency guarantees allow individuals to interact with some degree of trust and knowledge of the interaction. And that's why we're setting up mentors and family environments and working on our populace, their heritage and their families, and making sure they're comfortable and valued as people. This ties into the human dignity concept. So we've covered that with our school. I find it interesting that he's talking about our 5 gaps.
Right.
I'm going to have to talk about this with our consultant, because we need to work this guy's research in. He's important.
Right.
There was one more, if I remember correctly. Protective security is the system of social safety nets that prevents a group affected by poverty from being subjected to terrible misery. And if that isn't the purpose to our entire venture, I don't know what is. Development encompassing non-economic areas, Sen argues, renders the notion of a dichotomy between freedom and development, as implied by the concept of Asian values, meaningless and disingenuous. Well, I think that's sufficient backgrounding. Do you feel sufficiently backgrounded?
Yes.
So moving back into the section. So this is in Amartya Kumar Sen's book, Development as Freedom, the section Empowerment of Young Women. And I begin. One line of analysis that has emerged very powerfully in recent years, and which I've already articulated in earlier chapters, gives the empowerment of women a pivotal role in the decisions of families and in the genesis of communal norms. However, so far as historical data are concerned, since these different variables tend to move together, it's not easy to separate out the effects of economic growth from those of social changes, given what statisticians call multi-collinearity. Collinearity, I get it. Multi-collinearity. I shall presently pursue this distinction further with the use of cross-section rather than intertemporal comparisons. What should be, however, abundantly clear is that some things, besides the difficulty of procuring an adequate plenty, the necessaries of life, end quote, have made people choose radically smaller families. There's no reason why the high fertility developing countries cannot follow others that have already reduced their fertility rates through the combined process of economic and social development, no matter which component of that development plays exactly what part. However, we have to be more clear as to what the critical parameters would be in changing the climate of fertility. There is now quite extensive statistical evidence based on comparison between different countries and different regions, that is, cross-section studies as they are called, that link women's education, including literacy, and the lowering of fertility across different countries in the world. He's only talking about that they're correlated, however. He's not claiming right here causation.
No.
Other factors considered include the involvement of women in so-called gainful activities outside the home, the opportunity of women to earn an independent income, the property rights of women, and the general status and standing of women in the social culture. I have presented these issues already in the book, and there is a need to link up these discussions. These connections have been observed in inter-country comparisons, but also in comparisons within a large country, such as between the different districts of India. The most recent and the most extensive study of this connection is the important statistical contribution by Mamta Murthy and Catherine Guyot and Jean Dreyze, discussed in Chapter 8. As was noted, among all the variables included in that analysis, the only ones that are seen to have a statistically significant effect on fertility, now we talk about effect, effect on fertility are female literacy, and 2, female labor force participation. The importance of women's agency emerges forcefully from this analysis, especially in comparison with the weaker effects of variables relating to economic development. Going by this analysis, economic development may be far from the best contraceptive, but social development, especially the women's education and employment, can be very effective indeed. I have to stop here. So when they're trying to cry about the white birth rate, and they're simultaneously trying to push women back out of the workplace, they're essentially saying this stops and lowers the birth rate. There's a connection in there, and they're trying to social engineer us.
That's right.
So if we look at the whole big picture together, they're trying to lock up or get rid of or kill black and brown people, and then force white women back into the homes to reproduce and allow all of the jobs to go to white men, even if they're mediocre.
Right.
And that's what we have to resist. And that's what needs to be on our protest signs. We are not going back.
Right.
And I didn't even talk about the LGBTQ group,
Right.
of which we're parts. Not othering anybody here. Going by this analysis, an economic development may be far from the best contraceptive, but social development, especially the women's education and employment, can be very effective indeed. Many of the richest Indian districts in, say, Punjab and Haryana have very much higher fertility rates than the southern districts, with much lower per capita income, but with much higher female literacy and female job opportunities. Indeed, in the comparison between nearly 300 Indian districts, the level of real income per capita has almost no impact compared with the sharp and effective difference made by women's education and women's economic independence. I'm betting that that's not just true for women. It just so happens that there's a disparity so you can measure it.
Right.
I'm going to say that for our young people on the East Lake side of Lake County, California, here in Clear Lake Oaks, we need to make sure that they can read and that they can work. They can either have their own business, literally the exact thing that our foundation is created for, and our JUCO and eventual school intends to support, are number one, these two functions. It isn't enough to teach math and language arts.
No.
They need to be taught how to be fiscally independent, and they need to be able to read minimally at the 8th grade level comfortably.
Right.
Those are two base goals. And we will be using this information from Mr. Sen in our paperwork now to help back us up. So this concludes this section of our book club. Please find us, visit us. We are going to need donors. We are going to need subscribers, help.